Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's technically afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Bibliomancy for Beginners. Taylor is vibrating. Uh,
Gretchen tweaked. It's not my fault.
this is a book club hosted by the three of us, and today we're going to be talking about The Magician King. Before we get into all of that, we should introduce ourselves, and we should start with Gretchen, I think, as is usual.
Hi guys, I'm Gretchen from the blog My Life is a Notebook, and even if you just saw the video that Michaela and I posted yesterday, you'll notice that I am speaking a lot better today. I had my wisdom teeth out on Tuesday, and so if I at some point begin to look like I'm trying to rip the jaw off my face, it's because it still hurts like a tiny little beech tree. But I'm doing better, and I have my headset in so I don't have to yell. And yeah, I don't look as sad or as Botoxed squirrel as I did yesterday. So that's really exciting. I chewed on a donut today. It was really, really cool. So, that's me.
I'm Michaela. I am the person who runs this YouTube channel for the most part. I have a blog called The Piper Calls. I did not have my wisdom teeth out, although there is a hangout right after I had my wisdom teeth out from a long time ago where we talked about Ready Player One, I believe. That
Really?
video.
I don't remember that at all.
Yep, it was like the week I had my wisdom teeth out. So if you want to see me in the same pain that Gretchen is in, you could go watch that video. Joyce.
I'm Taylor. I have a very strong feeling that despite Gretchen's headset, there will be at least one time in which she yells this video. Probably constantly. I do stuff. I'm generally the personality of the Hangouts, not the actual muscle behind their production, so I won't try to take credit for any of that.
But you did try to take credit for the personality, which we all know is still not even close to true, so. Oh, I just tried to smile. I can't do that. Ow!
Oh no. So you guys might know that we have already done a hangout for the magicians, and Gretchen, do you want to tell them about that since you were the only one that had the constitution to watch the whole thing?
Well, if you guys have watched any of the videos that Michaela did wrapping up 2015, you'll know that we talked about the Magicians Hangout that we did last January as one of our favorite hangouts that Bibliomancy did last year. And it was a really, really cool hangout where we talked about the first book in this series, The Magicians by Grossman, and basically came to the conclusion that it was a really weird book that intrigued us, as it annoyed us, as it confused us, as it amused us. Basically coming up with the basic idea that the main character, Quentin, is an asshole. But if he is not an asshole, the books don't work, and that they really are an interesting critique of the genre of fantasy, specifically the genre of fantasy that make up like the Chronicles of Narnia and Harry Potter. But we were still kind of annoyed by how annoying he was to read, and the sexism and the slight rapiness and overall weird pacing of that book. And so basically it's this really great discussion where we really get into the nitty-gritty of fantasy as a genre and pacing of books and writing. And I did watch it while I was high on narcotic painkillers, so which is why this recap is slightly spacey, but it's really, really good, and a lot of what I just mentioned, I think, is going to factor into what we're going to talk about today, at least from my end. So.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to watch that episode, I believe I have set up cards for this video, so there should be a little eye at the top of the screen. If you click on that, there will be a link to that hangout. I would recommend watching that before watching this one, as it's the one for the first book and this is the one for the second book. And you should also know that there will probably be spoilers from the first book if you haven't read the first book in this hangout, as well as spoilers for this book. So really, there's spoilers going to be happening all around. But before those happen, we always give a spoiler-free overall review, so that you can get an idea of what we thought of this one. And then I will let you know when the spoiler section will show up, because we're a book club and we discuss it in detail. Gretchen, your overall thoughts on this book? Oh, should I read the description of it first?
Oh, probably wise, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to do that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt her. If you haven't read it, this is the description of it. Return to Fillory in the riveting sequel to the New York Times bestseller and literary phenomenon of 2009, The Magicians. The Magicians was praised as a triumph by readers and critics of both mainstream and fantasy literature. Now Grossman takes us back to Fillory, where the Brakebills graduates have fled the sorrows of the mundane world, only to face terrifying new challenges. Quentin and his friends are now the kings and queens of Fillory, but the days and nights of royal luxury are starting to pall. After a morning hunt takes a sinister turn, Quentin and his old friend Julia charter a magical sailing ship and set out on an errand to the wild outer reaches of their kingdom. Their pleasure cruise becomes an adventure when the two are unceremoniously dumped back into the last place Quentin ever wants to see, his parents' house in Chesterton, Massachusetts. And only the black, twisted magic that Julia learned on the streets can save them. The Magician King is a grand voyage into the dark, glittering heart of magic, an epic quest for the Harry Potter generation. It also introduced a powerful new voice, that of Julia, whose angry genius is thrilling. Once again, Grossman proves that he is the cutting edge of literary fantasy. Okay, now, Gretchen, what did you think of this book?
This is my copy, by the way, which is actually the ARC copy that first came out of The Magician King. So it doesn't have the pretty orange cover. It's just like this really dark cave. And so, starting into this book, I was like, Jesus Christ, Quentin is still an asshole. Which is like my initial reaction. I still don't like Quentin. But as the book started out, I was like, okay, this is a little bit more in your face kind of critique of the fantasy genre, because he talks about how, like, being a king is really the end of the story and nothing comes after. So that part, which was, I think, done really, not really well, but done well in the first book, seemed a little bit more in my face to begin with. But then they introduced the voice of Julia. And I love Julia as a character. Literally just when she described Quentin, the first time she described Quentin, and I knew, like, you get it. You get it. You said everything perfectly. And so she became my favorite person in the world. Still a weirdly paced novel to me. It takes a really long while to rev up, and then it goes weird places after it revs up, about 50% of the way through. But until the last 5% of the book, we were actually headed for like a 3 or 4-star rating, surprisingly, because I was enjoying it more than the last book. But then the last 5% of the book happened, and now I'm just angry. And so it ended up being a 2-star rating for me. And we'll get into why. We will all get into why, I promise you. But yeah, that's my feelings.
Yeah, the same for me. I was so mad at the last bit of that book. It was going to be a 4-star book for me, which is really surprising because I'm not that big of a fantasy reader. I think most of that is because I really attached to Julia and her journey through this book. I feel like Julia is like sort of the real protagonist, and then Quentin is just sort of coming along as like our narrator. And Quentin, just leave, just go. We could just follow Julia, and you could be over there. But no.
Well, I will say that I think following Quentin when the real story is happening elsewhere is part of the critique, but I'll just sit on that.
I mean, it is, but I hate him so much that
I do
just
too.
Yeah. No, not into it. So yeah, same for me. It would have been 4 stars, and then the end happened, and now it's 2 stars. So books.
I had a bit of a chuckle when you were reading the description, because it's describing, like how they wind up in Quentin's hometown again, and how only Julia's knowledge can save him. And I was laughing because, like, that didn't actually play at all into like the conflict or resolution. And then I had a larger thought where I realized nothing happens in this book. Like basically nothing happens in this book because it's divided into two parts, like the present day with Quentin's story, and then the backflashes to like Julia's process. And the whole thing with Julia's story is like giving the context for the big, like plot issue of the novel that is resolved in no time, does not actually play a major role, and is just kind of like, one, it still doesn't really make sense to me in like an actual sort of way, and two, it's completely irrelevant.
Hmm.
The novel doesn't seem to care about it. So really, this book went through a lot of wasted time, a lot of pointless arc, and I think how that winds up is that I was honestly less frustrated with this book than the first one. I thought a lot of the issues I had with it, particularly in pacing, but also just narrative drive, were not, present in the same ways. Even if nothing happened, I feel like Quentin, despite his desire to laze about and do nothing, was dragged along by other people enough that we were seeing new things, we were learning new things, and the story actually flowed very well for like the same length as the first book, but things happen in that order. However, I did not like it nearly as much as the first one, because none of the first one had these great moments with Breakbills South and the introduction of the monster, and even the climax had some very interesting aspects, but this had small details without any of the real flavor. The book seemed to kind of be going through motions, and I feel like it's just a setup for the third one.
Mm.
This is the Dragon Age 2 of a series. It did not exist. It just needed to in order for certain ideas to be conveyed.
Yeah.
And you know what's really sad, though, is that at the end of our hangout for the Magicians, my ending comment was, I feel like this was all a huge prologue to the second book. Like, it could have been summarized in a chapter. And so here we are at the second book saying, it could have been summarized in a chapter as the prologue in the third book.
It does fit with the commentary I've heard in which people always say, the series didn't really find its rhythm, it didn't really find itself until the third book, and I'm like, then why is it a trilogy?
Yeah.
Why should I put the time in?
Although I do have to say about this book is that I feel like this is the first time I really saw Quentin go through some kind of character change. And I don't even want to call it a character arc because, but I do feel like at the end of it, he has finally learned one tiny thing, and even if he doesn't comprehend what he's learned, he's still a douchebag, but at least he's learned this one tiny thing.
Gretchen, I agree with that, in that he goes through all of the motions and the reflections of a character who has learned something without me ever feeling like he's actually learned something. It's just saying, look at all of these introspective moments of him seeming to mature or recognize a context. Well, it all seemed very on the nose when I was reading it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I said that in my bit, too. I was like, in terms of, like, what we were able to infer, and, I mean, the last book demanded that we infer because it jumped around so much, and we found that really annoying, so I feel like this book swung back the other way, where we're all just like, why is it so on the nose? Why did you tell us? But I mean, it's still telling without showing, even though we aren't doing time jumps.
Yeah.
It does do a time jump, though. When Quentin and Julia are in his world, a year jumps forward, and that's where all these character changes go on for the other figures, and then we're just left to feel like they're...
when they go back to Fillory, because it was a convenient...
I guess like it doesn't even matter to me because I don't give a shit about any of those characters.
Wait, hold on. Before we continue, spoilers!
We're
Guys,
not really giving spoilers yet,
it doesn't matter. I'm saying that we can have spoilers now because
Yay! Mom's
no,
gonna let us play.
I'm just letting you know that if you don't want to be spoiled, go and read the books if you want. I mean, if you don't care about it, by all means, sit and stay and listen to us talk about the problems that we had with the book and why it is that for most of us it fell short. Okay, continue.
I was referring to specifically with his young ward, map-making boy.
Benedict?
That's the name, thank you.
Benedict.
Who
I was
suddenly
waiting for
takes
him
it
to turn around and become a
from-
traitor, and he didn't. And then I was sad.
You mean the character death we're supposed to care about but don't?
Not even just that.
We would
I mean,
only-
his from a member of Good Charlotte to, like, buff, competent boy who then has, like, we have, let's see, it's not Penny, is it Peggy? Patty?
Poppy?
Poppy. I knew they
Poppy.
both had, like, the P end in Y names. That just seems a bit odd. Anyway, so the Poppy instead of the Penny line where she's like, he sees you as a father figure, don't you see that? Which is like, huh? And then we have the sudden death we're supposed to care about when I'm like, we don't actually see this character change. We're not actually feeling any of this. And I'm like, oh, they need to go down to the underworld for these things. That's why he's dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Your plot device makes sense now.
Yep. Do we want to do our usual like run through, or do we want to start with the big thing that ruined it for most of us, and then go back?
I think a bit of foreplay discussion would not hurt the video, so maybe the traditional structure.
Okay. Favorite part. Gretchen.
I think I already gave it away, but anytime Julia is narrating, and specifically her narration of when she describes Quentin, because she hits his douchebag self right on the head, and that was a moment where I fell in love with her, and I was like, you are still, like, kind of a bitch, but you are a bitch that I love. And I just really liked her whole story up until, the end. But she was just so much more of a stronger character than Quentin made her out to be in his narration of her, and so I was really glad that we got to see that because it just proved how much of a uncaring ass Quentin is.
Yeah. I think for me, my favorite part was actually the very brief, like, section where there is that little girl on the island who makes Quentin's passport because she's the most adorable thing with tiny rabbits. And, like, I was like, you are a beautiful tiny side character that I wish had a bigger space in this thing aside from just being like, here, have this crayon drawn passport, I made it for you. And then she sort of did, but yeah, she's my favorite part. I found her very cute and wanted more of her.
I would definitely agree with Gretchen in that the Julia points of this story were much more interesting and engaging for me. And I agree that Julia is a much more interesting character than she's been kind of given credit for by Quentin. And I would say she definitely is interesting in her arc, and her background is super interesting, even though she actually brought very little personality to any of her own scenes. Like, she doesn't have much of a presence besides, like, knowledge and drive, but that was enough for me to make those worthwhile. And I think it just hammered home the... Wait, what was that?
I was just going to say, I think she's supposed to be a foil to Quentin, who has knowledge and no drive.
No, and like that, I mean, that definitely is fulfilled. I just mean, like, she doesn't have much, like, personality in her discussions or anything like that. But like I said, that's a minor thing in the way she was being used. But this kind of follows up on a discussion I've been having with Michaela, in which I really have to ask myself why the last two books have not just been the story of a mage rejected from Breakbills going out to like learn their own magic and track things down, and how that was a so much more interesting story. Like the
I mean, I
last
think
the last two
that
books were just Julia trying to figure things out.
because I think I was reading Goodreads reviews before this, and someone asked the question, um, did was this book set out to critique the genre or contribute to it? And I think in the first book, we definitely decided that it set out to critique it, and I think that that was the major mission. And I do think that by the end of this book, it did end up more contributing to it than critiquing it in its own weird way, because again, it fell into its traps while trying to critique them in this weird way. And I feel like since that we can kind of guess that the critiquing was his mission to be since the beginning. If you begin with the story of Julia, being rejected from Harry Potter land, stuff like that, it doesn't lend itself as much to critique. It's a story that we've seen before in a certain way, as in because you can only critique Hogwarts from within Hogwarts. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I do think that the story wouldn't have been as interesting if we didn't have Quentin's story as the opposite to it. Because the reason that it was so good for me was that it was the exact opposite of what Quentin did. Quentin got to get into the magic school. He did the thing he was supposed to do, and then immediately did nothing for the rest of that book, essentially. Like, was dragged around by people, passed school and worked really hard, I guess, but, like, did drugs and sex, and I don't know. It was weird. Whereas we get Julia as, like, concurrent with what's happening in Quentin, and you know that this guy who complains about everything, he gets the one thing that he wants and has wanted since he was a kid, and still complains about how it's not good enough. Whereas Julia didn't even know she wanted this thing, gets a taste of it, and then gets devastated by something she can barely remember. That, like, seems like a dream to her. So we definitely need these two stories to, like, talk to each other, I think. I wouldn't...
Alright, that's fair.
However...
I still think Quentin's parts are super boring and tedious.
Yes.
I mean, yes, they are.
Poorly paced.
Can I say, I want 2 books about Penny's story. Let's talk about what Penny did at Breakbills, doing all of this stuff, figuring out how to get to Fillory. And now let's get a second book where we learn how Penny becomes like a floating, handless god being. Like,
and still a douche.
Yes, but he's a douche who's at least doing interesting things. Like, can we get his story, please?
I mean, knowing Grossman, it would probably be 75 pages of him learning to meditate.
Yeah, probably. I just feel like Penny is the most underrated, interesting character in this book. Like, in the whole series of just, like, he's sort of, at the same time as he is, like, almost the exact same character as Quentin, he's also plot driver number 1, right? Like, every time you think that you've come to the end of the plot, Penny shows up and is like, hey guys, I have a new plot for you.
He is the very convenient one.
But, like, it's because he's doing stuff that we don't get to see. And then just goes, oh, I know these other people and they'll help me. And, like, they're our protagonists, I guess? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's this whole other story that's going on that I would be so much more interested in, and we just don't get to see it.
I mean, again, that's like the MO of these books, though, is kind of the point. It's like when Quentin comes back and that year has passed, and he's like, that should have been my quest, man. Why? Elliot's, well, like, sorry, dude. You decided not to do it. And I really did like that line where he was like, no, you guys told me not to do it. And he was like, no, Janet said you probably shouldn't, but, like, the only one who doubts you is you, man. And I was like, oh, Elliot. Hitting the nail on the head. But, I mean, that's the point. If Quentin had been the strong enough character to do that, to go on that quest, it wouldn't be the book that we have, which is trying to say something else than that. So again, I still think that it's like so boring. But I mean, it's trying to say something with it. So like, the reader in me is upset, but like the theorist in me is like, I see it. I see it. I don't enjoy it, but I see it, and I
Yeah.
respect it.
I feel like Quentin is the type of character who hates how things are, but also would hate if they change. So he spent, in the beginning of the book, he was like, I'm so bored, I want to go on a quest. He has the choice between two quests and choose the easy quest to go get taxes, right? Like, he's like, I want to go on a quest, but not a real quest. Like, I want to quest without questing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, he
And I
doesn't
mean,
actually want a quest. He just wants the glory of having gone on a quest.
yeah. He's a character who's like the whole first book for him was, I would love to go to Fillory and be a king of Fillory and blah blah blah. And then he is a magician, doesn't do anything in it. He becomes a king of the king of Fillory, doesn't do anything with it. And I mean, really liked I him not doing anything as a magician was really annoying. I really liked what they said about being a king of Fillory and having nothing to do. Because even though maybe at that point, even if you wanted to do something, they explain how there really isn't anything to do. Because like that's what that magical world is. So I really did appreciate that as a thing. Of like thinking after the happily ever after, there's nothing left to do. And you're just like
Yeah.
trapped in this existence forever.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, some people like, I guess.
And it did spend less time dicking about useless than the previous book, or at least it did it in smaller intervals, so I didn't feel as bothered by it.
Well, they were always trying to do something. Even if the beginning was so slow, because it was Quentin dicking about, being like, I'm gonna fix up this ship and go get these taxes and do this thing. But because after he and Julia got sent back to like our world, there was a point to everything that they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Which I think is why I was more engaged in the middle of this book than I was with the first one, because in the first book there was no point to anything that they were doing. Absolutely not.
Yeah, they were just doing it. It's definitely true. Like I said, Quentin went on a weird fake quest, and I believe I described it as then the quest became to get back to where he was before he started the quest because he realized he actually didn't want to do the quest.
Yeah.
That was this book. It was going, wait, nope, never mind, nope, 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 nope.
And then we stumbled into just a random, you woke up the gods and now the gods are realizing that there's magic. So,
Plot.
I don't know.
I'm gonna be so
program
totally.
Door of the Keys, one, makes no sense. Two, no sense is tried to be made of it. Like, no explanation is given, really.
I'm gonna be completely honest, once we got to that part of like the exposition of that part, I started going, flip, flip,
yeah,
flip.
Just it's so much like, oh, okay, so this is just this is the big thing, okay. Because we didn't care about it. We had no reason to care about it.
Yeah.
It was just random and yeah.
I would agree.
Although I think that leads into, because like I really did enjoy Julia's whole story and how that situation came to be. I think there was something really interesting happening with the Mirror's magicians and stuff like that until the ending. But I think that I liked it up until the reveal. And then the reveal was, instead of being like this grand fireworks display, it was like, the Wizard of Oz's machine broke down. And that was the reveal instead.
Yeah,
and
the curtain was
just
pulled
sitting
aside.
there like, this is really. And then, I mean, I don't know if it's also just really annoying to me, skipping what is annoying about Julia's character in that 5%, so we can talk about that more in depth, but then, because Julia just leaves.
Yep.
And I'm like, there's the one interesting character gone. Again, what is it with Grossman getting rid of the only interesting character who also happens to be female?
Yeah.
Like, his female characters are shit. It's so bad. Alice dies.
Aren't we all so glad that Janet was not in this book?
But I mean, that's
Yeah.
even, to me, it's even worse though, because it was just like, she's not even, like, they're like, no, we're just gonna replace you with another revolving door of annoying females, and so you get Poppy instead.
Who, I mean, in one way was the Penny replacement, but it was also someone Quentin could pine after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she played double duty in that sense, so good
I mean,
for
I
her.
really feel like there was like, oh, there's so much less sex in this. Let's give him Poppy for like 30 seconds.
But, like, an equal amount of every woman he encounters, he's like, yeah, let me talk about that for a bit. Let me tell you about Julia's breasts for a paragraph.
Yeah.
Now I will close the door.
Yeah. Can we talk about how the two characters who were like dragged into Fillory against their will at the end decided they were going to stay in Fillory for no reason?
You know what?
They
I
were both
thought
just
that
like,
was
no,
funny.
no, it's fine, we'll be here. Bye,
As
guys.
mad as it was, I thought it was funny because it just screws Quentin over even more.
I mean, yes, but it made no sense because the
True.
entire time that they were there, they were consistently saying, no, 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 we have stuff to get back to. Like, I don't want to be here. I've got a dissertation I've been writing. And
Yeah.
then, like, just because it would dick Quentin over, they're like, you know what? We'll stay here. Here's pretty nice.
So yeah, the reason I liked it was not because of story reasons, just because I really hate Quentin. And the Schadenfreude was too good.
I
It was
mean, I
good
agree,
to
but at
see
the
him
same time, I
cry.
feel like that's the only reason it happened.
Mm.
So I'm just like, I enjoy it, but I feel like there's too many, and I mean, I did say this in the original Hangout, which is that I felt like the first book was a NaNoWriMo novel where they were just like, and this will happen because of plot reasons, not for any reasons that actually relate to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's how so many things in this book popped up to me, and I was just like, why?
I think the only thing I thought was cleverly done when it came to dicking Quentin over at the end of this book was that he used his passport to get the key and couldn't use his passport to go into the other world. I
Yeah.
thought that was well placed.
Oh, that was
was
really
the
well
only
done.
part. And I was like, that is a good way for him to be like, well, fuck, I needed to use that, otherwise this wouldn't be a thing. So, wait, what? Like,
And that's
that
what
was
I
well done.
that's what I was saying about I felt like the critique of the fantasy world elements was a little bit more on the nose this time around.
Mm.
That was so well done where, you know, the hero isn't the one who wins, the hero is the one that pays the price.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that's well done. And I just like Quentin's just like complete discombobulation as he just goes downhill as he realizes all of these things and like that he is the hero and now the hero is the one thing he didn't want to be and now he's really just like just keeps getting screwed over.
Yep.
And like that was I really did, as opposed to the last ending where it was like doop de doop de doop surprise, we're gonna go be kings and queens of Fillory. And we're all like, what? We forgive you, Quentin. What? This one was like, but also, oh.
I hope in the next book it's revealed that Ember has been just not quite mind controlling, but altering the people so that they decide to stay as kings and queens. Like the two are, and he's not letting that instability to come around again. So he gets he gets Poppy and Josh, just brings them into the fold.
I mean, that would be interesting.
And Quentin was so focused on himself, he couldn't be brainwashed by someone else.
Yep. Oh, goodness. All right,
And I
do we
mean,
want to talk?
yeah, I was
about
just
the
gonna
big
say
bad?
something really quick about the third book. And
Go
like
ahead.
like Taylor just said that people say that doesn't get its stride into the third book. And it's literally, I feel like it's because in the third book, Quentin can't take the easy way out. Like, all of his easy ways have now been denied to him. And now it's like, listen, you have to, like, do shit now. And so the third book is, like, someone finally sticks a poker up his ass. So that just is funny to me. But yes, no, we really need to discuss what happens to Julia because I won't be able to make the appropriate anger expressions of, my face, but I'll.
I'll try to substitute those while you're talking.
Thanks. I knew I could count on you.
Hold on, I'm gonna click on Taylor's face so that it stays there. So now he's gonna be the thing they look at while Gretchen talks. Ready? Are you ready?
Well, I mean, they're already doing that, so whatever.
Well, I mean, Michaela, I was gonna let you go first.
No. You go first, friend.
Okay. So, I don't know. I guess I'll summarize this in case you haven't read this book. But so, Julia has been with this group of great magicians who have been trying to summon a god, and so they decide that they're going to summon, I think they call her Our Lady of Sorrow or some shit.
Our Lady of the Underground.
Oh, Our Lady of the Underground, whatever.
That's a line from an Ananias Mitchell song. It's Our Lady of the Underground.
Whatever. This, like, dumb shit thing. And so they all get together and they do the summoning, and surprise, they don't summon Our Lady of wherever the ground. They summon Reynard the Fox. And he's
Reynard.
a trickster god person thing. And
this is what happens when you've been studying in southern France. That's who you get.
And so they're all like, no, we wanted to summon this person. And this fox goes around.
He essentially TPKs their entire group of mages.
Yep.
That are apparently the best mages that are hedge mages ever.
Just kills them. Just takes them out one by one.
The fucking god. So we're told.
TPK. I mean, yeah.
And so, I mean, I really don't, like, this is why I shouldn't be the one explaining this, because I'm so angry, I'm not even sure, like, how this led up to this, because I don't even understand it.
So, I got this. We're gonna
Okay, unclick from Taylor so someone can watch you.
It's fine. They're gonna look at me now. Okay. I'm clearly not as entertaining as Taylor's hand gestures, just where they were pretty funny. After watching this guy murder, like, everybody except for maybe one person, Julia just goes, "Stop it!" And the god stops and starts talking to her for a little bit, and she basically says, "Kill me and let this one go, and give her what we asked for, because we've paid the price now. You need to give us the other half of the bargain, because that's how bargains with gods work. You pay, they dish out, I guess." Instead of killing her, the god decides to rape her, which is described in detail. In detail.
Graphic detail.
Not a fan of that. 2, steals her soul so that she becomes an emotionless blob for the entirety of the book that we've seen her in. And then, as a result of that, she turns into the exact thing she wanted to be in the first place, which is a daughter of the goddess that she wanted, which wouldn't have happened if she didn't get raped.
She becomes a nymph, ultimately, correct? Or is it a dryad?
Dryad.
Yeah.
So, rape leads to woman losing soul, and leads to woman using humanity, leads to what she wanted all along.
And it was so close to being, like, the right idea he was trying to get at, where he has the line where it's basically, she was able to remake herself through that, but it was, like, not despite of that she was able to do it, but only through this was she really able to
And I would just like to bring it back to show that Michaela and I had the right idea in the first book during that fox sex scene, where we were like, this is really rapey. And then we were like, maybe it's not rapey, maybe he didn't mean it. No, I'm taking it back. He meant it. He meant it. There is, like, because now this has happened, and, like, what?
Women just need to be forced into sex with things they don't want, and then they get what they want. That's, like, what they need. Twice now. in these books this has happened. Twice! I'm
Once
mad!
per
Well,
book.
you basically have the line say, "Oh, it wasn't that bad. Like this is just, now it's better."
Also, like, and it was a callback too to the beginning of the book, and I'm not sure if anyone caught this throwaway line, but when Julia first starts getting really depressed because she can't have the magical experience that she wants, her family's reaction to that is that they think that she's been raped. And like that's what they think has happened to her.
Hmm.
And I thought that was a really, really wrong line when I read it. And then I get to this and I was like, oh, you know what? No, I'll take it back. I will go back to that line. Can we go back to that line, please?
'Cause Gretchen, wasn't it like after the fourth week, her mom finally asked her if she'd been raped,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that was the phrasing there.
Yeah. But in that one, it's because there's something so wrong with her.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah. But then we get this, and it's like, no, well, actually, rape was the solution all along. Surprise. Should
Plot
have just
twist.
gotten raped sooner, and, you would have, everything would have been fine. Like,
Yep. It's so dumb.
and then
And
the thing is, too, that what happened to Julia could have happened so many other ways. And it's the difference between, I'm not saying, like, you can't include rape in a story, but there has to be a reason for including rape in a story, and you have to do it the right way. This could have happened so many other ways, in so many better ways, and this is what happens.
so, like, he could have just taken her soul and been like, you don't get to have a death now. You're no longer human. Deal with that. He didn't need to humiliate her and do the one thing that is the desecration of a woman, because so many writers, especially male writers, I feel like when they want to take their women down a peg or like teach them a lesson or they need to grow as a person, use rape as the catalyst of that, because that's the worst thing that can happen to a woman.
It is why I'm no longer planning on watching Game of Thrones. Is the show writers, not George R. R. Martin, have been using that increasingly more often for character development.
And that's the problem. That's what, and I mean, Michaela and I were having this discussion yesterday, and it's when, like, literally, when you start saying using rape or thinking of rape as a trope, you have screwed up. That's your problem's already started. If that's the way, like, just the way that we have to talk about this rape in this book or have to talk about Game of Thrones, like, they use it as a plot device, they use it as a trope. And no. I mean, do you know what it is that you're doing? Like, I don't understand. Like,
And I feel like I would have been. I don't think I would ever have been completely okay with the fact that she was raped. That bothers me. But the thing that made it worse is that is her salvation. That the rape is the catalyst for her salvation. And it's just when she accepts that she was raped and that's what happened, that she becomes the thing she truly is supposed to be.
The deific mother figure can come down and offer her redemption and transformation.
Oh no, I totally agree, and that's what I mean is like the difference between rape being used as being used and being, I don't even know what the other word would be because I can't think right now, but that's the same thing. Like, it happened, and if you want to include it, I can't stop you. I'd prefer that you wouldn't, but I can't stop you. But if you're going to use it, you can't do this with it. You can't do that. You did.
It should not be an avenue from point A to point B.
No, and an avenue
dealt.
that where it eventually turns out that it's a good thing. Like,
It's a necessary step on this journey.
And there is that whole point where, because she's talking about before that, they're talking about how people became gods through like ascension and transformation. And when I think of ascension, I think of like, I watch too much Stargate, but you meditate a lot and you become a pure being of light and
I
and
thought
like
that they were gonna like bring up things like berserkers and things like Valkyries, who are all people who get to be demigods or godlike beings through their fighting prowess or through complete devotion to their deity. Whereas this was just apparently you just need to ask a god to rape you and you get what you want, and then you get to be a deity. It's fine.
I mean, I would have really loved some really great thing because this is a trope that's come up in both books with like the Breakbills exam and then the exam that Julia goes through a couple of exams and like leveling up.
Mm.
And I would have loved like eventually you get to level 1,000 stars and all of a sudden you go through your Pokemon evolution. Like I would have accepted that. I would have accepted there's some like mental test you have to pass, since that has been a recurring thing in these books.
Mm.
Because that really would have fit in, I think, with these. Um, but instead, there was no mental acumen needed at all, unless you
Mm.
count what they needed to get to the spell, which was really only Julia saying, "Why are you focusing on these big ideas? Local lore, guys, local lore."
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I also had problems with if she was turning into this deific person throughout this entire story in the present timeline, then why did it seem like she became more and more of it as she used more and more magic? But then at the end, the final transformation was just because she accepted herself. Like, the first time her eyes turn all black, it's because she did this really huge weird spell that nobody else knew how to do, and then she was like slowly losing her way of speaking properly because she was doing more and more of this weird magic. Like, I would have completely understood if her transformation was just that she had gone so far in learning magic that she was becoming magic, right?
Perhaps we could deal with this in almost a sliding bar. Like, she was becoming more consumed by magic and power, and that was leading her down a specific dehumanization.
I mean, that's honestly what I thought was happening.
Yeah.
The end moved it in a completely different direction, of one restoring her to her original state before a sort of transcendence. Although there were so few points that we could determine that is just extrapolation without much support within the
Yeah. The other thing that I was going to say that I forgot to mention was that she lost her humanity before she lost her humanity. So, like, she talks about how she had to, like, cut out her family and, like, focus only on the magic. And because she was doing that so much, she, like, forgot how to feel emotion and actually care for people. Which is why I think Gretchen and I both had the idea that this was because she cared so much about magic and was learning so much magic that there was this trajectory it was going on. And then it was like a meteor came out of the sky and just bashed into her, the rape meteor. And that's what it was the whole time, guys. It was just rape all along.
And I mean,
Perhaps
what an amazing thing to say about magic, where we've just seen it as something that Quentin has used this whole time to screw around. And meanwhile, it's been like this, it's been consuming Julia, and it's been like this really deep, like, drug addiction, basically, that she's been going through, and it's caused her to go through this whole personality shift where she's really has forgotten to be human because of her engagement with magic. And meanwhile, like, what a powerful thing to put next to Quentin's, douchebaggery about, just magicking himself,
Frivolity. The
yeah,
frivolity.
frivolity. And what a thing to say, and then to destroy, which is what I was taking from it, which is why I was really excited about it. I was like, oh my god, this is like the dark bit of magic that this really is the dark side to it. And then the end comes along, and it's like, well, you thought all that, but never mind. We're going to rape her instead, and everything's going to be fine, which is never something I want to say ever again in my life.
Yeah. It's just bad. It's just bad. I don't think I'm going to be reading the third book, even if that's the book in the series, personally. I don't know about you guys.
As I said after finishing the first book, I think I need to take some time away from the series.
I mean, you know, if we all, I mean, the only reason I've gotten this far in the series is because we've been doing them through book club, and I've looked forward to these discussions. And even if, you know, I don't know, next January we're all dicking around and we're like, hey, you know, maybe Taylor and I can just do it. And maybe that would be the only way that I would get into it. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if we do it again as a group, I'll do it again. But I'm definitely not looking for it on my own. Like
I'm not. Wait, my brother owns it, so it is in the room next to me currently. I have no intention of reading this on my own.
Nope.
Yeah.
I think
mean,
it's where we have so much less to say about it. This one, at least. We liked Julia, we were frustrated by Quentin's things, but there were so few points and moments in the book that stands out to us that there's like one on each side, the positive and negative, without much else going on.
I mean, I will say that what I enjoyed and why this would have been going so far as to say a 4-star book for me before that ending was that because I thought that it was saying a lot of really, really good things, and more good things with points as critiques of the genre than I got from the first book, because I felt like the first book was a bit too pointless. And so I really do think, because I mean, like, we have really kind of, like, we haven't really talked about, like, Penny or Josh or these other characters that I think were around and
They weren't
really
integral to the plot. If they
no.
weren't there, it would have made no difference at all to this book,
Like,
aside from me being mad that I would have liked a story about Penny, because
yeah.
that
Or
was...
even, but I mean, even Josh, who just, like, goes through the Netherlands forever, like, that was really cool.
Yeah.
But I thought,
and then becomes super rich and just lives, you know...
well, that's what I mean. I thought that this book was setting up to say something so much more important than it said in the end. And even though I do think it did say something very smart in the end with how Quentin's storyline ended up, but because it set up 50% of the story to be Julia's, which was really the strong 50% of what it was trying to say, and then absolutely clubbed her to death in the end, and was just like, never mind, it's okay, because we're going to have a third book with Quentin still being a douche. And you're like,
no.
And he literally destroyed the strongest thing that I thought he was going to say.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the fact that, like, because I did enjoy, like, most of this, not most of this book, and I want to say enjoy, but I found something interesting being said through most of this book. But because of the way that it ended, I don't care anymore about anything that had potential in the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
I started out saying that, like, I would have much rather had just the story arc that Julie dealt with. Maybe not as it is right now, but that idea. And I think what we're, like, after Michaela's comments, I think not necessarily a book of short stories, but if instead of just, like, a bit of a monologue by a character about what they did, actually having just sections devoted to how these characters have spent their time afterwards. So we have the Penny, we have the Josh, and we actually see, you know, their growth in over time instead of just footnotes of, here's what I learned from this Magic School Bus adventure. I don't know if that's how Magic School Bus is structured. I don't really remember.
I feel like these characters would have turned out much better if they had a Miss Frizzle to help them, though.
Yeah, God.
No, don't give Liv Grossman another female character. Don't do it. No.
Oh, no.
Save.
But we already have the sloth as the lizard iguana thing. We've got the ship as the bus. We just need a charismatic and, you know...
I'm sorry, that sloth was friggin' Yoda. That's who that character was.
I love how the sloth was like, maybe go to the quick, go to the quick.
Wouldn't be
Quit down the
convenient,
underworld.
Quentin,
Quit.
if you were to go to the underworld. Do you just go see how he's doing on his own?
Maybe
Check
he'll give
him
you
for
a
the
thing.
boy.
Quentin. Maybe he'll give you a thing. I don't know how obvious Sloth could have been more obvious.
That's why he really reminded, or that's why she really reminded me of Yoda in the original
Yeah.
Star Wars movies. It's like, what's in there? Nothing. Go fight it.
Just go. All right, guys. Do you think we can wrap it up and shout out all our stuff and?
I'd rather. Yeah.
I hope that you enjoyed us talking about why we were sad and angered by this book. And look forward to hangouts where we actually like the books that we're talking about, because I'm sure that will happen in the future.
Someday.
Yeah, someday. If you did not know that we have a Goodreads group and a whole bunch of social media dedicated just to the book club, that's all linked below. And you can find it there and should follow it to know when we're doing stuff and what books we plan on reading and what books we might read. Speaking of that, over the summer we have an option of 2 different books. Either we would like to look at the first 3 books in the So You Want to Be a Wizard series, or in the Golden Compass series. Does that have a series name? Or is it just...
His Darkest Materials, isn't
His
it?
Dark Materials, yeah. So we're going to have a poll up on my blog, on Gretchen's blog, and on the Goodreads group, so that if you want to choose which one we get to do, then you can vote for that, and we will do that.
Although please be aware that that is for our special Nostalgia Junkies series. That is not including our regularly scheduled summer season, which will definitely be up with 6 different hangouts, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing 2 themed months this summer. One is everybody's doing a YA pick, because I've yelled enough that that's happening.
We want to know we do care about the genre.
Yeah.
And then the second month is we're doing follow-up books, so either second books in series that we've started in book club episodes, or books by the authors that we've done before, to give a little bit more of a author context to the discussion as well. And then don't forget that Michaela and I have our own videos that we do in the Betwixt the Books family. We do reviews, fun videos. We just did a book haul. So there's so much stuff that you can see just by following the YouTube channel, even if you don't follow anywhere else, although we suggest that you do that as well.
Yep. And all of our social media is down below, including Taylor, who does less bloggy stuff than we do, but is still lovely.
It means, like, my Twitter feed is a little more interesting.
Because it's not just links to other stuff.
It's not just informative.
Yeah. Well,
that's my claim.
Yep. If you wanna, I hope you wanna come again. And if you have any thoughts on this book, please leave comments down below, because I'm sure we would love to hear what you guys thought and like whether or not you liked it.
And whether or not you think we should do the 3rd book. Like, do you want to hear us be angry again? Or would you think we might not be angry? Is there less rape? Let us know.
That's okay. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.